During the time of the pandemic, people were struggling to keep it together and get through this terrible time. But it was was especially hard for the Black Lives Matter movement, where such a challenging time came a great deal of discrimination against them. So not only were people around the world struggling with the corona, but they were also had to worry about being killed because of their race. This also brings up the question of how much did the coronavirus affect the global impact of Black Lives Matter and how it started. Since when thinking about how challenging this time was for people, it was also a very impactful time. Since the start of the Black Lives Matter COVID protests, so many people were speaking up for what they believe in and wanting to help change the world in order to stop discrimination and police brutality. Since so many lives were already lost due to Corona, and now people not only need to worry about Corona, but other humans as well. The death of George Floyd is what brought the Black Lives Matter movement to action. After his death, thousands of people protested about this and demanded to stop discrimination and show them that Black Lives Matter too. The Black Lives movement has been around for so long now that even since the death of Trayvon Martin, the world started going into an uproar in order to stop these cruel deaths from happening again. But sadly, these deaths are still happening now. One of the most recent murder deaths was the murder of Ahmaud Arbery, showing that even though the Black Lives Matter movement is doing its best to stop this, they still have more work to do in order to make sure discrimination against them is stopped.
The Black Lives Matter movement had spread globally in places like the UK, Korea, Europe, and New Zealand. The photos show how clear it is to see how other places also protested against the injustice people face. In the UK and New Zealand, we can see how the Black Lives Matter movement and Floyd's death not only impacted them, but victims within their own homes, such as Billy M., a black transport worker in London who was killed, and police later closed her case due to the lack of evidence, which would lead the people of the UK protesting against this and to reopen her case, only to be shut down time and time again, which then would influence the people to tear down statues of political leaders, slave owners, and slave traders. In New Zealand, people being interviewed states that New Zealand is one of the worst places to be black, as it felt as if being black was illegal. A person, Mary D, quotes, "I was born French on the day we celebrated our country. But on a daily basis, I don't feel that this country accepts me. I know I'm going to have to fight twice as hard as the others, but I am prepared." The government tried to shut the people of New Zealand down and tried to use coronavirus as an excuse to try and keep the protest from starting again.
There were thousands of others around the world who protested at these gatherings. The Munich police reported an estimated 20,000 people had gathered for protests, while thousands more participated in Frankfurt, Germany. The US had seen tens of thousands take to Green Park, Parliament Square, and the streets along the River Thames in London, while 15,000 more took to the streets of Manchester, England, and 2,000 in Cardiff, Wales. Many different cultures around the world supported the movement despite the harsh times COVID put everyone through.
During the pandemic, the riots that Black Lives Matter held all around the US and the world was quite a beautiful view, where even though everyone was restricted and had to suffer greatly, they could all come together in order to help make a change. And it didn't matter what race you were, everyone of all races participated in these protests in order to help change the world.
In the case study by Valerie, she states how over 41 million people had shared posts using hashtags Black Lives Matter, Blue Lives Matter, and All Lives Matter. This is shown through the following graphs. The first graph showing the total number of Twitter posts that use the hashtags Black Lives Matter and Blue Lives Matter. As it shows, in 2020, there was an increased rise of Twitter posts equivalent with George Floyd's death, Breonna Taylor, and Ahmaud Arbery. The second graph shows from the dates January 1st, 2020 to April 30, 2021, which is a log that follows a more normal distribution by showing relative values. The graph shows that Black Lives Matter had trended more than Blue Lives Matter. The third graph shows the ideology of original social media posts between Black Lives Matter and Blue Lives Matter between the dates December 19th, 2020 to January 19th, 2021. The fourth graph shows the ideology of original social media posts between Black Lives Matter, Blue Lives Matter, and now including All Lives Matter from the dates April 1st, 2021 to April 26th, 2021.
In there, and I was upset, and I was saying, you know, what happened to George Floyd, it was egregious. I was upset about it when I watched it. And I'm standing there saying to myself, I'm just as upset as you are about it. It hurt me. I knew what was going on there. I knew what was happening to that man on the ground. Yes, I felt that pain. And what can you say to someone that feels the same thing you feel? And you know, and separating your blackness from the uniform, you're gonna be black regardless. You can't turn that off. You know? Because with us, Black Lives Matter, Blue Lives Matter, All Lives Matter, we fall in every single one of them boxes.
The counter movement Blue Lives Matter and the original movement Black Lives Matter inspired the city governments and police to compromise. An example of this change can be seen in Austin, Texas, where they changed how they taught trainees in de-escalating a situation, as well as introduced the trainees to different cultures in their city so that there was less of a chance of racist ideals to influence the trainees when they become officers. Another city that changed the way their police dealt with potentially violent situations was Las Vegas. The big city had been told by residents that the police used too much force when dealing with civilian misconduct. When Vegas taught officers less excessive ways to de-escalate situations, excessive force dropped by 23% in the community, where it stayed. It then became an example for other cities as well as how to train the officers. The Black Lives Matter was quite the strong protest despite what was happening in the world when it started. The world and the movement were both affected by coronavirus and actually increased the attention the movement had gotten throughout quarantine. Media coverage increased as many more victims of racial injustice spoke up, the more attention the movement got, thus making it more effective and influence the police reforms and having more of an impact in communities around the world.